Hey guys, sorry, having a little bit of technical difficulties over on Entropy. Anyway, welcome back to another exciting edition of Victory Never Sleeps. Tonight, for the second time on the program, we are joined by Gothi Daniel Young as we talk about another of Asatru's heroes that we celebrate with Days of Remembrance. Trying to think if there's news since last week. I suppose the biggest thing since last week is we've had people out at Sigourheim putting in some work, tearing down some old fencing, laying down some gravel for a little driveway space, and putting down a pad to put a structure on. So we're moving right along with Sigourheim. Yeah, I think that's the big thing over the last little bit here. And in almost exactly 1 month, we have Elsie Fest 3, a celebration of Folk Mother Elsie Christensen in Wisconsin. If you guys can make it out to that, I'd love to see you guys there. If you're interested, please reach out to James Alt, our folk builder in the area, JAULT at runestone.org, and he can try to get y'all set up. And yeah, I think that's what I got for right now. I'm sorry, the Entropy thing threw me off a little bit, but without further ado, Daniel, could you tell us a little bit about the Jarl, and assume folks out here have never heard of him before?
Sure, but before we get started into who he was, I can explicitly say who he was not, despite what Netflix may be telling people in their inaccurate betrayals of the Jarl. He was, in fact, not an African-American woman. So he became the Earl of Lade in around the year 962 after his father Sigurd was murdered by Harold Greycloak. Sigurd and his men were burned alive. And around that time, Jarl Haakon was about 25 years old. When he heard the news of his father's murder, he was enraged, vowed revenge, and never forgave, and nor had he ever forgotten. Eventually, he went to war with Greycloak to avenge his father. But Haakon's men were forced to retreat and fled Norway, where he had spent some time in Denmark under Harald Bluetooth. And the two of them got together and started to conspire against Harold Greycloak. In 970, they tricked Greycloak into a meeting in which he was supposed to meet with Harald Bluetooth and with Haakon, but instead, Haakon and some of Bluetooth's men then killed Harold Greycloak. And this weakened the throne of Norway because it left Harold Greycloak's brothers in charge of things, and they failed to fill the throne with any kind of authority. So it kind of spun the top of the hierarchy into a sort of disarray. So when Halpin returned to his lands, he had gathered some men amongst like the farmer and some of the local noblemen rise against the remaining kin of Greycloak. This led Norway into a civil war of sorts, and Halcon's legend began to really grow, specifically around his divine lineage and his exploits on the battlefield. And this really helped the farmers kind of really latch on to him in his quest to rid Norway of the remaining kin of Greycloak. They overcame the brothers, and the brothers were forced to flee Norway. So at this point, Bluetooth had assumed the throne of Norway alongside Denmark. But the true leader was Jarl Haakon. And of this time, it was written by the Skald, and I can probably going to struggle with this guy's name, but it's Radfeldsen. And it says, and I'm doing my best to quote here, "We know no greater Jarl beneath the moon's pathway, Haakon, than you. You prospered through battle and have ushered to Odin the offered corpses that Odin's feast upon. 9 royal men you slaughtered. This ruler rendered your land expansive. One second here. So this really tells the story of the common man and nobleman's love and appreciation for Haakon and their admiration. His legend continued to grow. His love for his native gods endeared him to his folk and restored temples to Thor and Odin. Especially pleased the farmers and the peasants during the Christianization period, where it seems like the faith in the old gods had began to dim. And then Bluetooth began to force conversions throughout Norway at this time, although Haakon himself was a devout pagan and a champion of his people. During this time, shortly after, Haakon became involved in another war in which Bluetooth rose up in rebellion against Otto II of the Holy Roman Empire, as he was no longer willing to accept German rule over Denmark and Norway. So Haakon and his forces, along with Bluetooth and his, crossed the southern border into Germany and defeated the forces of Otto. Returned to Norway again, hailed as a legend and a hero by this point, and was now known as Halpin the Powerful. But before he returned to Norway, he was forced by Bluetooth to baptize, and forced clergymen to spread Christianity throughout the lands of Norway. But by this time, he had crossed back into Norway. He had actually forced the clergymen out and continued to restore and dedicate temples to his gods, our gods. In so doing, he severed his alliance with Bluetooth, who was enraged by his actions. And he damned Jarl Haakon and vowed revenge. But by this time, Haakon, although he was not king in name, he was king in every other way of Norway. It says here in 986, Bluetooth paid a group of mercenaries from the fabled Jans Vikings to attack Haakon's lands and convert his people to Christianity. When they sailed into Norway, they could see they were outnumbered. There was like 180 ships to 60. And then a hailstorm began. It caused the Jans Vikings ships to collapse. A bunch of lives were lost, and then the battle commenced. And then he forced the fabled Jans Vikings to flee his lands. So again, his legendary status could continue to rise. The stories of habitual womanizing began to spread, where he would take the daughters of noble and farmers' daughters and would take them into his bed, but he'd only keep them around for a couple of weeks, and this started really getting people angry, because I think the hope was among noble and common folk is that those daughters would be taken on as perhaps a wife or even a concubine, but that didn't happen. And so this was like an extreme disrespect, according to the common folk. And this left room for a catalyst to really emerge at this time, and that was Olaf Tryggvason. And he was a descendant of Harald Finehair, and everybody had forgotten about the glory of Haakon's battlefield exploits and his resistance to conversion. And this seemingly disrespectful way that he was womanizing really began to kind of turn the populace against him. I mean, they forgot again about his legend, and was only focused on his cupidity and his resistance to Christianity. And the people of Norway began to revolt. And this caused Haakon and his servant Kark to hide in a hole in a pigsty. And nearby, Olaf was holding a meeting, offering a great reward for his head. And when Jarl Haakon had fallen asleep, his servant and supposed friend cut his throat and decapitated him. And he presented the head to Olaf and was waiting for his reward. And his reward was the same fate that Harkin Jarl had. And that kind of ends the story there.
All right. Well, thank you for that. I believe last episode was the first episode we've done of our heroes to where we actually had questions about the hero. So hopefully we'll generate some more of those this evening. I apologize for any and all of the background noise. My daughter wants to hang out and co-host this evening. That said, we've got a number of questions lining up so far. First one, what are your thoughts on making an AFA equivalent for the French version of the Mother's Cross? I'm sorry, I don't speak French and I would butcher that word so bad. Or the Cross of Honor for German mothers, to honor our wonderful mothers and large families in the AFA. Not opposed. I think that's a good idea. We try to honor those families and those mothers constantly. I don't think an award would be a bad thing at all. I'm certainly not opposed to that. I think that the size of families when those awards were awarded were a lot. So I think our requirements might be different, but it takes some looking into, but I'm not opposed to that at all. We are so very proud of all of our amazing children that have been born. That number grows every year. It is skyrocketed in the last few years. And we are very, very blessed with all these kids. We have events. I had a dinner at my house that I do monthly just this last weekend, and I was blown away by all the little kids running around. It was really special to see and really special to have so many little kids at my house. We had 6 little kids running around. I think the adults outnumbered the kids by 1, but no, it was fantastic. Yeah, we'd love to do something like that. King of Cheese, Matt and Daniel, good to see y'all. How we doing tonight? I think Daniel is having some technical difficulties as how's he's doing. We'll check back in with him when he pops back on. I'm doing fantastic. I look forward to this all the time. I know I always give you virtually the same answer, but no, I'm doing really good, Tony. I hope that you're doing well as well. And here he is. Daniel, how are you doing tonight? King of Cheese wants to know.
I'm doing okay, but my Wi-Fi is trying to make sure I don't have a good night. So
it's okay. You'll overcome. Next question. And this is kind of a little bit confusing to me. Can someone be a member of the AFA as a solo practitioner? I don't know what that means. I think by being a member of the AFA, you are moving one step away from solo practice, which I think is a wonderful thing. I'll say this: in the AFA, you're not forced to interact any more than you'd like. If you just want to sign up and donate and support the team, we appreciate that. If you'd like to get out and interact, we would love that. That's certainly what the goal is. But you're never forced to come to anything or to participate any more than you're comfortable with than you'd like to. So I hope that answers what you're trying to get at. Daniel, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I would ask why continue being a solo practitioner. I was a solo practitioner for, 2 or 3 years, best I could be before I joined the Asatru Folk Assembly. And not only has my spiritual experience increased, everything about me has increased. Much more stability in my home. I've achieved a bunch of success because the success of people around you is really contagious. And you become not envious in a way where you would not want them to have things so you can have things. But when you see that people have good things, you say, man, I really want a piece of that too. And a lot of times when people notice that change in you, what's changed? What's added so much improvement to your life? And tell them, man, my membership in the Asatru Folk Assembly, I'm surrounded by successful people, and it spurs me on. So if you're a solo practitioner, Matt said, we're not going to force you to come out to things, but why sit on the sidelines? Come join us.
Yeah, I I think that a great many of us started as solo practitioners, and pretty much all of us who started as solo practitioners are very glad we were able to stop being solo practitioners. Man is the joy of man, and us coming together and worshiping our gods is a really good thing. And I hope that you have the opportunity to experience that. But no, that's up to you. And there's no time frame on it. You can join and do whatever makes you comfortable. And maybe down the road, you'll feel more comfortable being part of a group. But yeah, I appreciate the question. And certainly you're welcome to join without having to practice in a group setting if you're not comfortable. See a question over on the side asking if Jarl Haakon is the one that Netflix blackwashed. They blackwashed and girl washed, so they turned him female and black for some reason. But yeah, he was neither of those things.
Shouldn't be surprised by any of this.
No.
We've seen this a bunch in pop culture.
No. Yeah, that's extremely unfortunate, but I think, we all know how that goes in this day and age. We have a question. Any kindreds / events in Maryland? Kindreds, not as of right now. Events, yes, we have gatherings in Maryland. We have, I believe, one folk builder currently in Maryland. We have folk builders right on either side in West Virginia, kind of surrounding in West Virginia, in Pennsylvania, and in Virginia, and don't have one in Delaware right now. But we do have a folk builder in Maryland, one of our newer folk builders, James Bethard. I would encourage you to reach out to him if you want to get more involved. He's always looking to do stuff there, and he's a nice guy. JBETHARD@runestone.org. And he'd love to help you out and see about getting you involved. But we absolutely do have stuff in Maryland.
James is a good guy too, good friend of ours.
Our next question comes from Mary in Las Vegas. Glad to have you on the show, Mary. If possible, I would like to ask whether you can suggest any of our gods and goddesses who can bring rain to the Las Vegas Valley. We are parched dry and desperately need water from the sky. Daniel, who do you think the most appropriate deity to call upon for rain would be?
I think the obvious answer to that would be Thor, being the storm god. Also, I would give offerings to Frey. You think of rain and you think of Thor. You think of thunderstorms and those kind of things. It's not really good soaking rain. It's more like what we call in the Carolinas a toad strangler. So it just washes over the sand. It doesn't really soak in. But I would definitely pray and give offerings to Frey because he brings the gentle rains and replenishes the earth that way. That's who I would do. Matt, who would you suggest they pray to?
No, I think that's perfect. You stole my answer. And in that order, too, I think those would be the perfect folks to pray for that. Although, and I've said this before, Mary, if you have a particular god or goddess that you feel a really strong connection with or that you'd like to, I think that any of our gods could be helpful in that way. But I think the most iconic for that would certainly be Asatru. From Crystal the Hermitess. Greetings. Where can I find out more information about Sigourheim? Will this branch into a new district? Well, certainly we've got an article every month in the Runestone about Sigourheim. We post regular updates. I try to update people here on the program. If you wanted to send me an email, mattflavel@runestone.org, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. But shoot, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have on here. Will this branch into a new district? Yes, eventually. It will branch into a new district when Hoff is established there. And Hoff is going to be our sixth Hoff, the Asatru Folk Assembly. So for that to happen, we need to first pay off Hoff, then we need to get and then pay off Hoff, and then after that, we'll begin on Hoff. And once Hoff is established, Sigourheim will be the center of a new Hoff district. But that's probably a few years out, but we're very much looking forward to it and excited about it. And I welcome any other questions you might have about it. It's something good for us to talk about on this program, or if you wanted to reach out privately, that'd be good too. Actually, while we've got him here, Gothi Young here is the man that scouted out the Sigourheim location for us. He was the guy on point doing a lot of the running around, talking to our realtor, dealing with all the moving parts on the purchase and getting things set up. So we owe him a great debt in the fact that we have Sigourheim. It is an absolutely beautiful and amazing place. And this man right here on the program with us tonight is the guy that found that for us.
It's a pleasure. If you noticed, the thumbnail from this video was actually taken. That was the first time the Alshira Gothi had set foot on the property up until that point. The only people that saw that property was myself and my wife. And, a lot of nerves and anxiety going into that because, Matt says, go find us property. And, he kind of rolled the dice and went with me on the property without having actually set foot on it and until after the purchase had already gone through. So that was a nerve-wracking experience, and but it's definitely a labor of love. And folks in our circles were looking at this type of idea as like a pie in the sky kind of thing. And when Matt first proposed it to me, I was thinking, shoot, man, we're decades away from that, right? Nope. Not with this man running the show. It's not.
Well, I've been in Asatru, in my time in Asatru, I've seen a lot of people talk, a lot of people sell dreams and promises and not fulfill them. And I've kind of vowed to do my damnedest never to be that guy. If I say we're going to do something, then I'm committed to putting my whole self behind making sure that happens. And luckily I've got some great people with me helping me to do just that. Our next question, is it possible to join a bloat/stumble at a Hoff before joining, as in seeing if the AFA might be a good fit? Yeah, absolutely. The trick in doing that is you do need to be vouched for if you want to do that. So if there's a Hoff you'd like to go to, I'm not sure where you're located, or I'd tell you exactly who to reach out to, but you want to reach out to one of your local folk builders or perhaps a Gothi in your area, and they'd be able to get you squared away and welcome you to one of our Hoffs. I absolutely understand wanting to check it out for yourself in person before you feel comfortable joining, and we welcome that. Just need to check in with that folk builder first. Our next question, I have a question. What is your opinion about fairies in general? Some consider them guardians of forests and gardens. Daniel, what do you think about fairies?
I don't all that often. I'm aware of the folklore, but I do think that it's possible. This is on UPG on the subject. That's possible. That is some sort of manifestation of a land spirit. And I'm bouncing the ball back to you, big guy.
All right. So no, I'm with you on that. I don't have a ton to offer because it's never been. That's never been a huge part of my Asatru practice, or I suppose emphasis. But I do tend to look at that category of being as being land spirits. But there's all different kinds of land spirits. I think fairies are one manifestation of that. We know that there are, benevolent and friendly land spirits, and there are also malicious land spirits. So they're not all cut from the same cloth. But yeah, I look at those as land spirits, and I think, for myself, first of all, it's become much more, a much bigger part of what I do now that we have physical locations. It wasn't really such a big thing to me before, but now that we have literal holy ground that we have temples on, building a relationship with the spirits of those places is really important. And it's special. And even, there's different things you can do to make offerings and to honor those spirits, but fundamentally acknowledging them is in and of itself a really important thing to do. And so we try to make sure that we do that at our physical locations, at our Hoffs and at Sigourheim. Oh, so you guys know Entropy is back up and running. It's adding a layer of verification that I hadn't set up before this program, but that's all something for me and our producer Nick to figure out afterwards. Right now we're up and running and we're good. If you want to join us over on Entropy, that's where you can get your questions to the front of the line with the super chat function. It's also where you guys can donate. All those little donations, they add up. They're much appreciated. And if you want to do that, the place to do that is over at Entropy. I'm sure that Nick can post a link to that. We're also, so everybody knows, being broadcast live on Odyssey, YouTube, VK, and Twitter. So those are other places you can find us live. And every Friday, I believe this episode's uploaded, and we've got our podcast on Spotify. So if you got folks that just listen to podcasts and can't be here for this, feel free to share this. Also, as a reminder, and I think this has popped up a couple of times, but please like, share, subscribe, do all those little things that boost the algorithm and get this out to the biggest audience of our folk we can get it out to. That's the thing. One of the biggest factors in growing the Asatru Folk Assembly is all the people that don't know that we exist, getting those people to know about us. I think once folks know about us, then I think we're an easy sell for a lot of people at those points. I think that the gods help them at those points. I think that what we're doing in our good works speak, but it's hard for them to speak if there's not people to listen. So getting an audience for that's super helpful. So anything you guys can do to share and promote this that we do is much appreciated. Back to our questions. All right, this one's for you, Daniel, from Antonio Rodriguez. Can you explain about Jarl Haakon?
Well, he was the last Asatru ruler of Norway. He was, while the powers that be that outranked him were doing their best to install Christianity in his land, he was still dedicating and restoring temples to our gods. And it also goes to show, too, at the end of his story, where the excessive womanizing. Now, we don't know how true that is, by the way. That could just be Christian morality being injected into our lore. It's possible. And it may have been deeply exaggerated, but it can also show how quickly someone's reputation can get taken from them just by selfish and poor choices at the end of their lives sometimes. Quite frankly, up until I knew I was doing this episode, I didn't know a whole lot about the Jarl. And by the time I especially stopped cramming today, literally just over 90 minutes ago, I was asking myself why I didn't know more about this fellow. But the source material for him is really expansive. You can look in Heimskringla and Adam of Bremen also mentions him as as the stock of Ivar, perhaps referring to Ivar the Boneless. And he's said to have come from a race of giants. And somewhere in his lineage, and I'd have to dig back through my notes to remember the king's name, but it was legend that he had descended from one of the early Norwegian kings who claimed descent from Odin himself.
So Cliff asks this, and I think this is an often asked question, but a really important one to, I don't know. I don't think this one can be spoken about enough. Why is it important to practice Asatru publicly? Real names, real faces, no cloak and dagger nonsense. Trying to even think to where to start, because honestly, the answer is so all encompassing. Everything to our ancestors was about reputation, about fame, and about putting your face on your deeds and being proud of them. There were things that were considered a crime if you did them secretly, but weren't if you did them openly. The idea of being secretive about the things that you do has always been looked upon as shady. We celebrate courage. Courage is one of our chief virtues, and we talk about it all day long, and we post memes of Vikings with blood dripping from their axe and talk about courage. Yet some of the people who post the most chest beating about courage go under the name of John Odinson with a picture of, various historical figures as their avatar, and won't put a real face in a name with the courageous boasting that they do. Literally standing up and being counted for us, for our church, for our gods, and for what we believe in is the most fundamental and basic level of having courage and expressing courage. And the thing you do when you have courage is it waves the banner of Asatru for other people to see. It makes those who are weak feel stronger and strengthened by your strength and your courage. It makes those that, think they're all alone be strengthened and feel like, no, I'm not all alone. There's other people out there who think like me. It brings hope to people who despair and think, everything's gone crazy and there's nobody that gets it. You standing up and put your face and your name behind it shows them somebody does get it. Sets an example. Our kids are watching. Our kids are watching. The future is watching us to see how we behave. Are we doing something wrong and shady? Well, then why are we hiding? And if we're doing something right, then why don't we stand up with our head high and be proud of it? And one of the other things about courage, unfortunately, courage comes with consequences. Being willing to stand against risk, that is fundamental to courage. It's the story of everyone we celebrate. It's the reason we have nice things. And it's the determining factor on whether this will survive after us or whether it dies with us, is if we have courageous people to pick up the banner, to put their name and their face behind who they are and what they believe, and to move this forward. But if no one had the courage to put names and faces behind it, this wouldn't exist and we wouldn't be here. The courage to stand up, put your name, your face, your reputation behind this that we all do is probably the most fundamental thing you can do to move Asatru forward. What are your thoughts, Daniel?
I mean, it's going to be kind of co-signing what you just said. I joined Asatru Folk Assembly in 2018, and I remember 2018 and 19 were kind of a weird time. A lot of guys were, faces were in the papers, faces were on television, and it was frightening to some people. But I think using those particular instances as a reason to be fearful is almost disrespectful to the sacrifice those people made before us. where I live, and I get this question a lot, and as is my wife Heather, as how do we practice Asatru openly in the Bible Belt? And that's because people fear what they don't know. So if we're really open about who we are, and as Matt said, I mean, we're doing nothing wrong. I'm just an average guy doing average things, and this isn't just some eccentric hobby to me. This has become a way of life, and I'm proud of what it's done for me. Why would I not practice this faith openly and in public? I, I don't respond to people who send me messages through social media apps. It's like blood-borne pathogen, son. You're not a real person. And if you're not willing to put your name and face behind your words, then your words are just wind.
All right, so I've got to tell the story, and if the person who went by this moniker is out there listening, I promise I'm laughing with you, not at you. Your fake name was really clever, but we get a lot of young people that have become, I don't know, culturally aware of some of the things going on in the world today, that want to push for something more normal, more traditional. We have this whole circle of people that are used to communicating through the internet and through fake names and fake existences. So I went amongst a group of these folks one time. I was invited there, and I appreciate the invitation. Again, I've got to tell the story because it's funny, not because I'm being a jerk, I promise. But I showed up. And again, I'm, at this point, I'm in my late 30s, and I show up, and people are sitting around and, drinking scotch and well-dressed, good-looking, noble people doing stuff. And I shook a man's hand, and I said, "Hi, my name's Matt." And he said, "I'm Chill Bro Swaggins." And I stood there, and I held a good firm grip onto the guy's hand, and I made it awkward, and I stared at him. And I stared at him, and I stared at Steve. You could call me Steve. Hey, Steve, good to meet you. So yeah, that's a thing. Using real names is important to what we do, and it means we're taking this seriously. I see some comments over on the side, and one of the things that the uninformed will suggest a lot is that Asatru is LARPing. It's especially LARPing when you have a fake identity and a fake persona. It's not LARPing when you go out there and this is who you are. This is what you say you are when you talk to your friends and your family. This is who you are when you raise your children. When this is who you are and you're willing to put your real name, your real reputation, your real face behind it, that's what separates any of this from LARPing. That's what makes this real. And that's scary sometimes, and that can be scary for people. But that's what makes it worthwhile. That's what puts meat and skin in the game. And that's why it's so very important to behave in a noble way, because your reputation affects those who put their name next to yours. So keeping that in mind is I think really important also. So Allie asks, now I messed up my thingy on the side here. All right, Allie asks, what is the biggest takeaway from the story of Jarl Haakon that we can apply in our lives today as modern Asatru? Daniel, what do you find to be the biggest takeaway that we can apply?
I think the Jarl, operating as a devout pagan during the time of the Christianization, was a good example of what we go through today and living in woke America. Rather than complain or hide, the Jarl practiced his faith openly. He continued to dedicate temples to his native gods. He continued to offer sacrifice to Odin, despite what the world around him was doing, and he did that up to his dying breath. And it's kind of similar to what Matt and I were just talking about. Being Asatru now in 2023, particularly of the folkish variety, is in particular in this society, is what we have to do to keep this thing moving, despite what the society around us thinks or what threats may be around the corner for us. We don't have the same threats that Haakon had. He literally faced the blade. I think if he can do that, we can face any of the obstacles in our path in order for us to continue to push this religion forward and faith forward and push our people forward.
You know, I'd say one of the, if not the point of Asatru is wanting our gods to be proud of us. And I think, and this isn't aimed at anyone, this just is, the more real your faith is in our gods, the more you genuinely believe in them, the greater you internalize whether you're making them proud or not. But the idea of, and this is an expression, I don't mean this literally because it doesn't work like that, but the idea of looking your gods in the eye and saying that you were unwilling to put your name in your face or risk a job or your parents looking at you funny or your girlfriend dumping you, to identify yourself as loyal and standing with them. I couldn't imagine doing that. I couldn't imagine standing before my gods and saying that. I would be too ashamed. I couldn't do it. The more real these gods are to you, the more I think that people will feel that way. Our next question, how can we incorporate the land spirits as part of our daily practice? I don't hear them brought up nearly as often as the gods and ancestor worship. Well, there's a good reason for that, and I think this is an important thing to point out. The land spirits aren't good or bad or on our team or not. Well, okay, individually they may be. Them as a category isn't necessarily someone we want to pray to or make offerings to or build a relationship with. They could be, they could not be. Our ancestors are somebody that by default, it's our duty to honor. Not only should we honor them, we want to honor them, we'd like to honor them, but it's literally our job to honor them. Our gods, choosing to practice Asatru means that we're signing on to being loyal to those gods. It's inherent to our faith that we worship the Aesir. That's what Asatru is about. Interacting with the land spirits is much different. You choosing to have a friendship with your neighbors isn't a necessary component of Asatru, whereas ancestor and god veneration is. So choosing to interact with the land spirits is much more of a personal choice. How I think is done in a lot of different ways. And I think this is one of the things there's a lot of variety to. This is like worship in your home at your altar. I think everybody probably has a different way they do it and a different tradition maybe in their family or in their home that they're comfortable with. Most often, what I think people do is they'll select a space on their property or on a piece of land that's important to them, or maybe a place where they do ritual. And they'll find a special rock or a special tree or a feature of that land that they focus that land spirit veneration on. An altar, if you will, for that. And they'll leave offerings there. A lot of the time, because it's what we're very used to doing, we make that offering in the form of some sort of libation. It'll be a drink or pouring out a horn, something that way. I know a lot of people with land spirits like to offer tobacco. I know folks like to offer like butter or cream, sometimes oatmeal or a porridge. But I really think that's up to you and where you're at and what you feel is a good thing. with what you're doing, with any interaction with any sentient being. I think that intention is a huge part of it, and what the spirit in which you do it in, I think, becomes self-evident to the land spirits, to the gods, to the ancestors, or to a friend of yours when you're interacting. I think you can tell that. So if your head and your heart are in the right place, I don't really think there's a variety of right ways to do that. What do you think on it, Daniel?
In the past, I personally have offered fruit, something of the land back to the land. Similar to what you were saying, though, this doesn't take like a precedence in my personal practice. Although the home I live in, I've only been here for 3 years, and this is the first place I've ever owned. And a lot of that's because of the Asatru Folk Assembly and the success that was contagious in my life and helped spur me toward this. But when we took this land and did the land taking ceremony, we offered a bowl of fruit soaked in mead, and we poured our devotion into that mead, much the same way you would in a normal bloat. But something that I've had to adjust over the course of my Asatru journey personally, as I know early on it was praise of the gods and asking for blessing, praise of the gods and ask for the blessings, and especially now with so much success personally and for the church, as I approach the gods, the ancestors, and the land material with a much more grateful heart. It's kind of goes back to what Matt was saying about intention. Whenever I do approach my personal altar, or I look up to the sky in prayer, it's just how grateful I am to have another day in Midgard to further my folk, further my faith, and to bring glory to my gods.
So I don't see if there's a question in it, but I am seeing some things on a side note, and I want to put it out there about doxing and professional things. And there is a time and a place, and I'm not speaking monolithically here. There's circumstances. I understand, if there's a particular threat where you work or in a career that you're building, there's circumstances. Maybe the nature of your job, people feel that you need to be a clean slate. And if they know about your religion or your politics or your home life or various other things, then you can't function professionally in that environment. Maybe that's the case, and I understand that. But there's levels. If you're in a profession where that's not something that's brought up, okay. If you're in a profession where all your coworkers are, having their Jesus stuff up and, talking about their faith, then I think that's the environment you should talk about your faith as well. If nobody's talking about faith, then okay, I understand that. There's, again, context is everything, but it's okay. So here's the thing that hits close to home. One of the things, I've been contemplative since my mom passed. And I love my mom. She's an amazing, amazing woman. But one thing that I learned from her life, she, as far as friendships went, she kept it very light with her friends, with her coworkers, with other families. She didn't share a lot of the deep things in her heart, her deeply held beliefs, because she was so polite. She didn't want to offend anybody. She didn't want to make waves. So she kept it about work or about superficial things. And I watched, and unfortunately, that really hampered her ability to have true friends and true relationships in a lot of ways. Because when you structure your friendships with people without sharing who you really are and what you really think, then you don't connect on those deeper levels. When people hide their faith from their family, from their friends, out of fear or anything else, I think they do themselves a disservice because they cut themselves off from a deep and heartfelt friendship based on understanding of who a person really is. And so I think that's really important. There's plenty of professional reasons where it might not be appropriate, and I get that. And again, we all have to make choices, and I'm not trying to be insulting or disparaging to anybody. I'm just trying to tell a little bit about where I'm coming from and my thoughts on it. And you're going to have to make the choices that are right for yourself and your family.
Well, checking the temperature of the room matters too. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I certainly wouldn't break out into bloat on my job or something like that. I certainly wouldn't. I don't talk about my work at the Hoff either. I'm a pretty avid golfer, and a lot of my coworkers I play golf with. And one of our the number one rule to get into our golf circle: nobody talks about work while we're there, because I'm not on the clock. Why am I thinking about work? It very similar to the way I treat things when I'm on the jobs. I'm there to make a living. It's there to put bread on my table and to make my mortgage payment. And if the topic comes up, we'll talk about it. But it's not like I walk around with a sign and so to ask me about Asatru or something.
No, and you don't want to be obnoxious.
No.
It is what it is. But there's the people that find Jesus, and man, they can't not tell everybody about Jesus 24/7. And again, sometimes that pushes people away, and people don't want what you're selling, and that's cool too. There's taking the temperature of the room is sound advice that Gothi Young gives us. Our next question. Hey, Matt, what kind of pelt/fur is covering your epic throne there, sir? Also, just had a chance to finish up last week's episode. Agree with those who said it was one of the best shows. Thank you. We got a lot of really great feedback from last week. I felt really good about it. That one felt like a really, really good show. And I got to thank Witten Svan for all of his knowledge and input he puts in on the programs that he's on. So first, my epic throne. I'll put out the secret. My epic throne was purchased at the thrift store, and I think it was $25. So epic on a budget. The pelt was actually a gift from our law speaker. It is an Icelandic goat pelt. But yeah, law speaker Alan Turnage gifted that to me a number of years ago. He also got my daughter a white one that is Icelandic goat. So there you go. Yeah, our law speaker Alan Turnage is my daughter's godfather and a really special guy to my family. And earlier before the show, I thought we were going to have a problem because she has this huge red bouncing ball that was chaos. She was throwing at my camera, and I was having to fend off. And that was also a gift from our law speaker. Next question. Can you both please talk about the importance of continual self-improvement, fitness, strength, etc.? Daniel, can you talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about that on a number of different levels, be it, for personal health, personal excellence. But I think it comes back to, I think our physical appearance is a reflection of who we are on the inside. I know a lot of folks would look at, bodybuilder with 7% body fat and talk about their vanity, but they care deeply about their presentation. And it's not just about what they see in the mirror. It's what they see in the mirror is a reflection of the inside. Myself, dealing with stupid health problems that, poor choices in diet and stuff for the last several years has, pushed me toward, not just hitting the gym, but really watching everything I eat. I count everything that I eat, whether it's, just a midnight snack or a glass of milk or whatever. But I think it's vitally important. I think beauty is important. In this day and age where mediocrity and almost people choosing to be ugly is a reflection of those soul sickness that our founder Stephen McMillan talks about. So I think it's vitally important that we take care of this is all we're given to further our cause in Midgard, and we need to take care of that vehicle the best.
You know, so a couple of things. First, to kind of start where Gothi Young was at, I'm not ashamed of it. How we look is important. How we look is vitally important. I mentioned on last week's episode about Lady Freya, but we want to look our best. We want to be beautiful. We want to celebrate beauty in what we do. And it was so important to our ancestors. It's so important to our folk, to our gods. This new movement we have of celebrating the ugly, of body positive, and those listening on the podcast missed my air quotes. No, celebrating obesity isn't cool. It's not cool because it's gross. It's also not cool because it's terribly unhealthy. And getting celebrating ugly, unhealthy people that are intentionally ugly and unhealthy does them a great disservice. For them to be a mascot for your deviant social views, they pay that price. And oftentimes they pay that price with their life. No, we want to be the best we can be. We want to present ourselves at our very best before our gods. So that does have to do with how we look, how we take care of ourselves, how we present ourselves, how we dress, how we act, how we speak, and the physical shape we're in. But also, it's so much more. We want to be the best at all things we can be. We want to be smart. We want to know things. We want to learn. We want to. It's a challenge every day, and so important to be a little bit better tomorrow than we are today and to build that success. And this is something Daniel mentioned earlier about success, but it's contagious. When you are around successful people, it inspires you to up your game and be better. I want everyone I'm with to be their very, very best. And if they're better than me at something, that's great because it inspires me to be more than I am. And if I can inspire other people, great. But I'm looking for people to be inspired by all the time. If we are each trying to leapfrog each other to be the very best we can be, it moves us all forward. And the thing is, when we're all strong and we're all the best we can be, if somebody's falling down or somebody's having a hard time, they've got a support system of people that can pick them up and carry them forward. And that's our goal, is to be the best that we can, because we are the living example, the poster to the world of what Asatru is, and to reflect our gods and our ancestors. I want those who came before me to be proud. I want to be the best version of my family line that's come about. I want Aubrey to be better than me. And I want whatever children Aubrey has to be better than her. I want to always be increasing and being better. And that's the path of the hero. That's what we owe our families. It's what we owe our spouses. It's what we owe our children. It's what we owe our gods, is to be the very, very best we can be. And none of us are going to be perfect. And I think that shooting for perfect is always really hard, but shooting for better than you are right now is always achievable. And if you're always shooting for better than you are right now, eventually that's going to lead you closer and closer to perfect. And that's the goal. Next question. Good evening, gentlemen. Which characteristics of Jarl Haakon can the folk learn from the most? What are your thoughts, Daniel?
That we stick to our faith no matter what, no matter what the winds of society try to push us to. And we always stand on our principles and stand up for who we are and who we come from.
Yeah. Courage to stand by your convictions, and also courage to go out and do big things. Courage to be a part of stuff and to live in a big way. he started out well in life, but because of his prowess and because of his, trying to go out there and be the hero, he became basically the uncrowned king of Norway for a time. The idea of going out, living in a big way, being proud of who you are, and having the courage of your convictions is an example for all of us. And I think that's really important. And I think that's why we celebrate a day of remembrance every year to honor him, and we remember his name. Now I got to stop in math, but we remember his name, 1,200 years after his time? And that's a really important thing. And it's a special thing. Next question. Do you have a favorite time of year or holiday? If so, why that one? Daniel, what's your favorite time of year or holiday and why?
My favorite time of year is October. That transition into fall. Here in the South, we call that, where I'm from, particularly we call that second summer. But when it starts to get that crispness in the air, and you kind of start to get those chills when you walk out on the porch in the morning, especially after the oppressive heat that we get in the Carolinas. It's definitely my favorite part of the year. I think a lot of that, to be honest with you, it's almost selfishly, but it's when my birthday is. And some of my happier moments growing up were surrounded by my birthday. My mother made sure that, while it may have seemed small to other people, but my mother, when she, not just the gift she gave, but just the effort she put into celebrating my birthday as her first child and all that, and seeing her give all of herself to it, it always fills my heart with warmth. To this day, I have the voicemails my mother leaves me on the minute I was born, and on my birthday. She'll call me at 8:12 in the morning every year, and she sings me happy birthday on my voicemail every year. And I save them every year. I think I've got 4 or 5 in a row now. And it's less about me, but it's more about my mom's love for me, and I'm totally enveloped by that. And as far as holidays, I love everything from Yule to from Winter Nights to Yule. Those are my favorite holidays. And again, that kind of harkens back to my childhood. Before my mother started getting into Jehovah's Witnesses and stuff, and we were still celebrating Christmas every year, I literally believed in the magic of Christmas. Just the spirit of that holiday and all that was really infectious. And I still feel that way to this day. My daughter is 14 now, and she believed in Santa up until she was about 11. Or at least she was telling me that anyway. So, but that was really important to me that my children believed in the magic at that time of year.
Don't ever move to Alaska, or Mom's going to be calling you at 4 a.m. Just news you could use. My favorite time of year is fall going into winter. Favorite time is Yule. My favorite holiday. It's my favorite time of year. Always has been since I was a kid. This doesn't make sense, and I don't know if I explain it right, but being in Alaska, that time of winter doesn't feel cold to me. It feels warm because you're not outside in that a bunch. You're spending most of your time inside, and it's dark out, and so you have the nice warm. I always like the yellow light. I don't like the white fluorescent light. I like soft yellow bulbs and lamps and firelight. And you're inside by the fire, and it's warm, and you've got family and friends around, and that's when people really spent that time getting together, and it just always felt magical and special. I think as a kid, seeing all the lights and all the special stuff around that time of year was always really, really neat to me growing up. And I love that. I love that to this day. But you know what? It doesn't have to be up in Alaska where it's snowy. I've been in the Yule season everywhere. And again, they put up trees and lights, and it's, the darkest it's going to be there. and you get that feeling. I can remember, it felt that way when I was down in St. Augustine, Florida for a couple of years. Do this thing called the City of Lights during December. And, all the historic buildings downtown and everywhere has, their lights up. They're, I think the white Christmas lights up. But it's just neat. It's a whole special feeling. They got the Holly Jolly trolley or whatever they call it that takes the tourists around, and they drunkenly sing carols at you or whatever. It's just fun. So that's my favorite time of year, and that's probably why.
It is awesome.
It really is. And like I say, it can be in the middle of the tropics, like in Florida, and it's still really cool. Next question, is it wrong to keep your identities secret? For example, if we're promoting views online now that are not considered acceptable, is it wrong to not show your face and keep your identities a secret? We talked about that a little bit on this program. Context is everything. It all depends. It depends where you're at. It depends what you're doing, and it depends what particular view you're expressing and how you're expressing it. In the big picture, yeah, that's not the ideal way you should do it. Putting your name and your face behind who you are and what you believe is the best and right way to do stuff. But context is everything. It depends where you're at, and it depends what you're saying. The more that you can live courageously, I would say this, it's on a spectrum. You can't always be perfect. You're not always going to put your face and your name on everything all of the time, everywhere. The closer you get to that, the better. So the closer you can get to living as openly and authentically the things that you believe, the better. There's a million circumstances that everyone out there can think of on why to keep stuff secret. And I get that. And so let me just say that. Everyone out there, when I say this, or very, very many of our viewers, when I say this, immediately are thinking of, but I couldn't do that here. But I've got a career. These other guys have a job at the gas station, and I've got whatever. But my parents are old, and they just wouldn't understand. There are a million excuses. And when I say excuses, that doesn't mean they're not legitimate excuses. They may be very legitimate. There's a million reasons not to, but what I challenge everyone out there to think about is reasons to, or situations where you could. Where are you not living openly and authentically that you could change that up and put your name and face on it and stand proud for what you believe in? Instead of thinking all the things that you can't do, what things can you do? And yes, ideally, putting your name and your face behind who you are and what you believe makes anything you want to contribute that much more powerful. One of the problems online on the internet, it's what people like to call slacktivism. People think that they're doing something or making a change by spending all day arguing with nameless, faceless people that may be sitting in mom's basement, and it's not the real world. I know a lot of people with great potential that spend all their time in Twitter arguments. They could be out there living life and building a family and building a reputation and worshiping our gods and participating and doing things. But they'd rather get in navel-gazing, belly button lint debates with people on Twitter. And I think that's worth examining as well. What do you think, Daniel?
I think we've covered this pretty extensively, but I'll offer this one piece of advice. If what you are saying is something that you wouldn't sign your name or face to, don't say it. And if it doesn't lead you or us to victory, don't say it or don't do it. That's where I stand on that.
All right. This one comes from Bodhi. Gothi Young, can you speak on how Asatru is grown-up, real-world polytheism?
Well, I think the answer is in your question. It's grown-up, real-world polytheism. I mean, we're actively out here putting our faith into action. And a lot of times you'll see these, again, Matt was referring to memes earlier, or about, Asatru is, is about what we do and not necessarily just what we believe. I live an Asatru life. I don't just practice Asatru when it's Asatru time. It's Asatru time for me and my family 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And who am I telling? The guy on the other side of the screen is literally a full-time Gothi. This is his full-time job. Look at all the cool stuff that we're doing. It's the 4 Hoffs. It's Sigourheim. And, the horizon is still within reach. We're still chasing that horizon every day. Just this past month, the team at Hoff fed 60 families in the last 2 food drives. And that's barely scratching the surface when it comes to what Odin's Hoff is doing. Baldur's Hoff is doing phenomenal stuff up there in Murdoch with their food pantry. And Njord's Hoff is coming up and nipping at our heels and doing awesome things down in Florida. This is out here doing it. And rather than talking about it, debating it, and studying it, and talking about the what ifs, one day we're going to have, intentional community. The AFA's got one. One day we're going to have a temple. The AFA's got 4. We're out here actually practicing this faith and putting those things into action. And it reminds me a lot of the slogan, or the motto, rather, at Thorshoff, that words are wind and deeds are iron. And it goes back to that age-old Asatru maxim that we are our deeds.
All right. Absolutely. So many people talk about it, and the difference is when you live in such a way that you are about it. And that makes literally all the difference in the world. All right, next question. What do you think of the quote unquote Asatru channels that say the gods aren't real, but just represent nature and natural forces / biology? So, I think the answer is in your question. The fact that you put Asatru in quotation marks, those people are not loyal nor true to the Aesir. Not only are they not loyal to them, they don't believe in them. Those folks are atheists that like cool Viking stuff. And atheists out there, if you want to like cool Viking stuff, that's awesome. Viking stuff's cool. But that's not Asatru, and it has nothing to do with Asatru. And what I think is what I dislike about it the most is that it's confusing to new people. It's very important, and in the AFA, we try really hard to get the word Asatru to mean something, to have it have a meaning that's recognizable, that others, when they hear it, can associate it with something. And it's a beautiful word that has an important meaning. People have spent their lives building that meaning through faith, through reverence, through worship, and through the gift cycle over the years. For armchair intellectuals to get online and claim to be Asatru and then talk about how not real the gods are and how atheist they are, it's a slap in the face to those of us who've made this their entire life. But yeah, I don't know what more to say except for those people are wrong. They're very wrong. They're drastically wrong. They're as wrong as they can be. I would say the gods don't represent nature. Nature perhaps represents the gods. I think one of the biggest things that is unfortunate is people reverse the order of things. When they see elements that are shared by our gods and that are shared by nature, they think the gods are a reflection of the nature as opposed to the nature being a reflection of the gods. When they see our people live a certain way or do a certain thing, they think, oh, the stories of the gods are just tales to explain people doing people things. Maybe people doing people things are a reflection of our gods and the gods that created us and the values and the belief in our gods that our people do. Not just maybe, but that is what happens. Yeah, those aren't Asatru channels. They muddy the waters and make it really hard for well-meaning people out there to figure out who we are and what we believe. And what I think the biggest harm is when regular folks Google Asatru and those folks have a better algorithm than we have.
Yep.
It makes people discover that, wow, these, Asatru, they don't really believe in the gods. That's all, just atheist, mumbo jumbo. And then they turn the channel and go elsewhere. People that are naturally drawn to our faith, that if we were the first thing they saw, maybe they would come home to Asatru and come home to their gods, are put off from it by pretenders claiming to be Asatru when, to be honest, they're just atheists. And I can respect that. Be atheist if that's what you're going to do, but be honest about it and don't take something that we love and that we cherish and degrade it by your atheism. Do your own thing. What do you think, Daniel?
I couldn't have said it better myself. The answer is those people are wrong. And they've obviously never had a true spiritual experience. Matt weekly shows where that moment when we see one of our people have that look in their eyes, that aha moment, like, the minute it becomes real. You ask those people, it isn't just the elements of nature that cause that.
So the next question, can you explain the difference, if there is one, between fear and cowardice? Is there a difference between courage and recklessness? Where is the line drawn? So that's three questions, and I think that they're all in need of an individual response. Difference between fear and cowardice. Fear exists. Cowardice is having your actions dictated by that fear. One can be terrified of things and still do them, and that is courage. One cannot be scared of anything and go out there and do them. That's also courage. But if you're scared and you let fear be the defining factor in your character and who you are and in your life, then unfortunately you're a coward. And if you do that on an individual action, it is an action of cowardice. One of the things that I've noticed, and again, please don't think that I don't go through these things myself or contemplate them over the course of my life. I'm not talking down to anyone, and I'm aware that reality is very different than me telling you the perfect thing to do. Real life is much more messy than that, and I get it. And courage is such an easy thing to say, and it's such a hard thing to do. I know that. Fear prevents each of us from doing things all of the time. And sometimes that's a very smart and reasonable thing to do. Oftentimes, it's not. It's a cowardly thing to do. But we're all susceptible, myself included. I get that. Please don't think that. And I know on these shows, but it's my job on these shows to tell you about the ideal thing, not to tell you something that's not true, but might be more comfortable. So I'm trying to live up to that, but I'm also not trying to hurt anybody's feeling or rub salt into anything. Difference between courage and recklessness. Absolutely. Courage is doing the right thing. The right thing isn't always the most bold in your face thing. It's the noble thing that ought to be done. Recklessness, there's a lot of things that ought not be done, but just doing things on a whim because you want to and because you don't fear anything, that's reckless. Factoring in whether it's worth it, whether it's not, your chances of success, your chances of failure, your fears, and your convictions, and then making the right choice. That's the difference between courage and recklessness, in my opinion. And the question, and I'll say this is a question that that rubs me wrong, and I'm taking it honest from the way you're asking. So this isn't aimed at you. This is for our audience that hears this. It's a common refrain when we're confronted with something that takes discernment to decide. People always ask, well, who's to say? Well, who's to decide? A lot of different ideas about right and wrong. Who's to say one's better than the other? You are. That's your job as a man. I am, because today I'm taking it upon myself to say it. Any of us who have courage and the strength of men, we're the ones to make a decision about right and wrong, to make a decision about where the line is drawn. We can talk all day, and there's no way that Daniel or myself can provide the perfect line of exactly how much you should risk to do something courageous and exactly how much consequence is too much. Every situation is going to be different. But the thing is, in Asatru, you're judged by your peers and you're judged by your gods. Are you confident that acting in a way that is in not doing something because you're scared of it, is that a decision that your gods and your folk and your family will endorse? Is that something they'll celebrate, or won't they? As far as courage and recklessness, if you go out and do the right thing, are your gods going to be proud of you? Are your ancestors going to be proud of you? Are your folk going to celebrate you for doing it? Or are they going to shake their head at how stupid you were? And I think that's where that line is drawn. And that line's going to be drawn different for different people and different for every situation under the sun. But it's your challenge as a man to step up to that and to choose courage over fear and to choose, courageous actions over reckless actions. And answering that question is each of our jobs to be worthy to stand before our gods and our family at the end of the day. What are your thoughts on those three questions? And like I say, they're three very separate questions that each deserve a response. Daniel?
If I can get Nick to throw them back up on the screen for me so I can answer them correctly.
All right, first one. Can you explain the difference, if there is one, between fear and cowardice?
I think cowardice is caving to that fear.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I think it's caving to that fear and letting that fear control you. And, that I would do this, but what if kind of thing.
All right.
And I've got some personal stuff to add to this when we're done answering these questions.
Okay. Is there a difference between courage and recklessness?
Absolutely, there's a difference between courage and recklessness. I think courage is facing your fears, and it's not what is it the saying goes? Courage isn't the absence of fear; it's what you do in the face of it. But I think being reckless is also part of it. It kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about if you wouldn't sign your name to what you have to say, then don't say it. If it's not something you would feel comfortable saying in front of your mother or your employer, don't say it. Otherwise, there's consequences for those things.
All right. So that may answer this next question. Where is the line drawn?
I think I answered that already. I think it's if you say or do something so outlandish that potentially cost you. I mean, not just talk about your livelihood, but friends, social stature. How does it reflect on the rest of us? That's something to always keep in mind. Those of us who are out here with our names and faces, are your words going to make us look good or make us look bad?
All right. And what personal things did you want to share?
Okay, Matt or Nick, if they want to throw in the shepherd's hook on this, this is pretty personal and it's something I'm kind of embarrassed about.
All right, Nick, man the dump button.
Thank you, Nick. So I mentioned I joined AFA in 2018, and I talked about some of the craziness that was going on in my region in 2019. A number of guys in the southeast, and some of them fairly close to me, had gotten doxxed, and some of them famously gotten doxxed. It was pretty rough stuff, and it literally scared the hell out of me. And this is before I decided to be a Prince Folk Builder or any part of leadership, and I really had some time to contemplate. And at the time, there's rational fear and there's irrational fear. And I had a tendency to go to the irrational side. And I woke up, this is at the time I was, night shift guy. I woke up at 4 in the afternoon and said, that's it. This is more than I can handle. Because I had people around me at the time that was constantly feeding me with, with fear, this black pill and stuff that the enemy was waiting in the bushes in my backyard to, just come and out me and all that. And I pulled the plug on my membership. And this was, I'm going to guess, early October of 2019 or so. And a bunch of messages from my friends. Those friends were some of those guys that had gotten doxxed pretty heavy and were in a pretty bad way. And a lot of those messages were the same. Dude, what the hell? And don't let my situation run you off and all this stuff. And with it, and Matt can testify to this, that within weeks of making that decision, I picked the phone back up and knew I'd made a mistake, and reached out to All Syria Gothi directly. And the first person I called was Rob Stam. And it was less about whether or not I'd be welcome back. It was more for me to apologize for disrespecting him, that he stood literally face to face with the enemy and paid a pretty heavy toll for it. And he still stood firm. And he didn't just stand firm. He upped the ante, stepped on the gas, and put his name out there and became an Apprentice Folk Builder. So when the Al-Shura Gothi was gracious enough to allow me and my family to rejoin the church, I had that same thing in mind. It was like, if I'm going to come back, I'm coming all the way back, and I'm going to stomp on the accelerator. And that was just literally a momentary lapse in judgment and caving to irrational fear at the time. Because, some of you folks might know me personally, some of you don't, but I'm really just kind of a regular guy. It's not like I'm out there doing, any kind of political activism or saying and doing outlandish things. I'm literally here for the furtherance of my folk, the furtherance of my kin, and the furtherance of my gods.
So you bring up some first. Thank you for sharing that story, because it's really valuable that we keep it real with folks. We're not just talking out of our backside on this. We are people that go through the same thoughts and fears and feelings that the rest of you guys do. Some of us have been around a little bit longer on, either in life or in practicing Asatru, and have some different experiences, but we feel the same things, and we get it. The irrational fear is a really big thing. When everyone around you is running around like Chicken Little saying the sky's falling, it's easy to get freaked out.
Yep.
I'm not saying there's no consequences. There are. But you know what? There's way less than you think there are. First of all, your chances of getting doxxed are not the 100% that you seem to think they are. If you get doxxed, it doesn't mean that you get fired. We got tons of people who get doxxed that their employer doesn't care because they refuse to act on you for your faith, or they even agree with you and don't like all this cancel culture nonsense. Things aren't as bad as they seem. And so being able to keep your head above pessimism is really important. So we've got a $10 Canadian donation from Lawrence. Appreciate you, Lawrence. Good evening, gents. I've been busy with trip prep lately and not tuning in as much, but just a comment on polytheism. The best evidence in support of it, in my opinion, is the utter ridiculousness of monotheism. Great stream tonight. Thanks and have a good evening. Thank you, Lawrence. We appreciate you. Not sure where you're traveling on your trip, but I hope you have an amazing trip, and we look forward to talking to you when you get back. So I don't see this in the questions queue, and I want to go ahead and mention it. I see a thing in the chat that says, I'm folkish and believe in ancestral memory and other racialist thinking, but I'm more agnostic when it comes to religious dogma and spirituality. That is my hesitation in getting involved with the AFA. First, I really appreciate you being honest about that. I think that a lot of people may not be comfortable being as honest about that. So what we like to say, and I think this is a paraphrase of what Whitten Cliff Erickson, friend of mine, has to say on here. You don't have to believe in the gods to join. You have to want to believe in the gods. So we talk about, and Daniel talked about this a few moments ago, there's a moment that happens when all of a sudden the gods are real. You wanted them to be real. You thought maybe they were real. You hoped, but in your heart of hearts, you weren't sure. And then boom, there's a moment that it hits you and your eyes get as big as saucers and you can't go back. Of course they're real. The thing is, in order to have that moment happen, very often you need to take those steps to facilitate that. And sometimes those steps are joining the AFA and being part of a bloat, being part of a stumble, being there when these things happen. So I wouldn't let that honest reservation prevent you from joining the AFA if you have an open mind and an open heart. You can join and try it out and see if it rings true to you, and see if you open yourself up, if the gods will be there to fill that. And I hope that they are, and they have been to so many of us. So I would encourage you to give it a shot. And your honesty on that is really appreciated. If we're not honest about where we are, it's very hard to move forward in an authentic way. And I appreciate that. Next question. I have a serious question for both gentlemen. Who brews the best mead? Daniel, so far in your life journey and Asatru journey, who is the best mead brewer?
Man, you're putting me in a bad spot. I'm not a mead connoisseur by any means, but my very favorite mead that I've tried during my journey through Asatru was the spruce mead that Whitten Cliff Erickson makes. That's my favorite.
All right. Cliff makes some spruce mead. I appreciate trying the idea of spruce mead. First, the spruce mead I thought was good. Secondly, spruce is close to my heart. Being from Alaska, that was the big evergreen that we had everywhere, and what I remember growing up with so much as a child. Well, shoot, as a child, as a young man, as a man into his 30s. I didn't leave Alaska till 2014. All right, so I got to be honest. Unfortunately, all three of these people are no longer AFA members, which is sad. One of them, two of them are on the team of our enemies. Probably three of them, if I really thought about it. But I'm going to be honest. Three best meads. I think of equal quality. It just comes down to preference. The first was actually one of the first meads that I had. And his mead was the first, well, not true, but the first homebrewed mead that I had. There was a guy named Bill Shelbrick that was a folk builder in the AFA for a time. When I first got involved in the Asatru Folk Assembly. And at midsummer 2010, he had some mint chocolate mead.
Ooh.
that was interesting. It wasn't one of the best. This is not the one for the contender for the best, but it was really good for what it was. For a mint chocolate mead, which isn't what I want from my mead, it was good. And he made a lingonberry mead that was great. And then this thing called apple piety that was an apple pie flavored mead. I don't know what he did. Guy was a chemist. I don't know how he accomplished it, but it tasted exactly like liquefied mead consistency apple pie, and it was absolutely amazing. Another guy, and I forget his last name, was a guy named Shannon in the Dakotas, in North Dakota, I believe. He made a orange spice mead, and that was absolutely amazing. And he had it that one time and then never showed back up to something that we did, and I never got any more of that mead, and that was a shame because that was fantastic. And then there was a guy named Patrick in Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey area that made a spiced pear mead. So apple piety, the spiced orange, and the spiced pear, best meads I've ever had in my life. Just on preference alone, the orange and the pear are my top two. And this is only because I'm an orange spice guy. The orange spice wins out. So this guy named Shannon in North Dakota makes the best mead. That's what I got on it. But I think that either of those three people can fight for that title, and any given Sunday, it might be any one of them. But you know what? And I'll preface this. I like a sweet mead. I really hate to do this, and Daniel will understand exactly why. There's a guy named Paul that makes a really dry strawberry mead. That's the best dry mead that I've ever had. The strawberry character comes through. Don't have a high opinion of the man, but got to give credit where credit's due. It was it was my favorite dry mead, but I'm not a dry mead guy. I'm a sweet mead guy.
He made a peach mead that was pretty decent too.
I never got to try that one. I'll resist the urge to do the voice.
I was fighting it the whole time, I promise you.
Fair enough. All right, so King of Cheese, back in from the Forge. What did I miss? Lots. You're going to have to catch us on the replay or listen to us on Spotify after Friday. But you missed lots of good stuff. Lots of good stuff, a lot of it talking about courage. And you missed by way more information than anybody really wanted about different meads that I had. Next question, Daniel, very important. Who had better mic skills, Jericho or The Rock?
It's going to have to be The Rock. I mean, I liked 98 WCW Jericho when he first turned heel and was doing the feud with Dean Malenko. That's just classic stuff, but I'm gonna have to give it to The Rock, man. Memorable catchphrases. I mean, even people who are not even wrestling fans know, like, if you smell what The Rock is cooking, or
Mandy, stop this. This is a folkish broadcast. I feel like I have to say Lionheart Chris Jericho. The Rock is the right answer, but those of you younger than myself, if you have the ability or you have Peacock and you can go back and watch 97, 98 Chris Jericho from WCW, it was amazing. If you can watch him call, Daniel may know exactly when this was at, but the Cruiserweight Battle Royal was the coolest thing I ever seen. That steals any moment I can think of from The Rock.
Yeah,
but that iteration of Chris Jericho, talking about Stinko Malenko and his creative commentary on the other Lucha Libre wrestlers was top notch. Daniel, what was that? What pay-per-view was that?
I'm going to take a stab at it. I'm pretty sure that's either Super Brawl or Spring Stampede of 98, maybe. It might be 97.
there you have it, guys. Go dig deep in the. That's a deep cut for you, but that's where the good stuff is.
And I'm a huge Jericho fan, by the way.
Jericho Holland.
The guy's in his 50s and still going strong.
For the record, I just want to emphasize that one time he beat up Bill Goldberg. That happened.
Legit, like really beat him up. Not
his thing in the back. He was tired of taking Goldberg's crap, and he was able to show up. So I got to appreciate that and respect it on a whole different level. All right. Next question. How careful are you guys in Alaska because of the Sasquatch people? I think that's a fascinating question. I'm not sure what Sasquatch people you're referring to. People that look and smell like Sasquatches, actual Sasquatches, questions all over the place. All I know is this. So I was, when I was a kid, there was a show called Unsolved Mysteries. Now, not the kind of lame, unfortunately, Netflix version of Unsolved Mysteries, which I hope gets better, but the OG, like 1990 Unsolved Mysteries with Robert Stack. Thing was, as a kid, this is a news program. It's a very serious program that talks about real disappearances and crimes and abductions and very serious things. And the guy's voice is legitimately terrifying.
Yep.
So that was gospel when I was a kid. This was deadly serious things. And I had a Cub Scout camp out to go on. This was in Alaska. This is why the story is relevant. And then they did an episode about Bigfoot. Same guy telling me about very legitimate people who got abducted and disappearances and, people finding their long lost relatives and like serious news stories with no change of tone, no change of show, starts talking to me about Bigfoot sightings. And I'm, about 9 years old, 8, 9 years old. Made for a very uncomfortable camp out for the next weekend in the untouched wilderness of Alaska. This is a thing in Alaska that so far I haven't really experienced much down here in the lower 48. When you go hiking and camping in Alaska, you're in the middle of nowhere. Down here, you're on trails and there's people everywhere, and it's much harder to get in the middle of nowhere. Right off a highway in Alaska, you can get in the middle of nowhere where you won't see another camper. So, every noise I heard, every rustle of a leaf, every twig that broke was Bigfoot. I swear to it, or I would have sworn to it when I was 8 or 9. So that's what I got for you. I have never seen or encountered Bigfoot. Honestly, I think that most of the encounters in Alaska they're in southeast. They're down around, what are they on? Prince of Wales Island, I think. They're down closer to Juneau, and I never got down to that part of the state. But that's the closest I know what to make out of that question.
The theme music from that show helped make it creepy.
Yes, it did. Very well done.
Going out to like the trash can at night or whatever, take the trash out for mom, and I just watched an episode of it, and that theme music would be stuck in my head, and somebody was behind me the whole time. I swore to it.
So speaking of that, they also did an episode. It was like at Halloween time, and they did one about werewolf sightings.
Mm-hmm.
Thing was, werewolf busted out behind some garbage cans, those old like tin cans, and it rattled them and made crazy noises. Yeah, that was terrifying as well. I remember I needed to sleep with my light on after that one.
I remember that.
All right. So the next question. Speaking of mothers, not a question, more a request. My mother is very sick right now. Is it appropriate to ask everyone for prayers to air for her speedy recovery? Yes, it is. And this is from Jasmine. Jasmine, if you could please give us your mother's name on the side so that we can do that appropriately. And I'm very sorry to hear that your mom's sick. I genuinely wish her the very best. If you could put her name on the side, I think that'd be a very nice thing for us to do.
Jazz, she's already in my prayers.
Next question. Is it really wise today to put your name and your face on everything you can, considering the current dangers of new AI technology? So again, there is a spectrum between none and everything. Does it always need to be on everything? Maybe not. Should you have it on the most things that you can reasonably? Yes. Like Daniel said earlier, should you have it on everything that you genuinely believe and you're confident saying in front of your parents and in front of your gods and in front of your children? Yes. Are there places that might not be what you do? Okay. But here's the thing with the new AI technologies. If you want to live like the Unabomber and live in a little cabin in the middle of the woods and sneak into town and put things in the mail, maybe, just maybe, you can avoid those AI technologies. Honestly, you can delude yourself with the illusion of privacy, but privacy that you think that you have doesn't really exist. There's facial recognition everywhere. There's that privacy's come and gone. In the face of the fact that you don't really have that privacy, even if you think you do, letting the fear of the lack of anonymity prevent you from living the way that is authentic and standing up for what you believe is a very, very easy win for our enemies. Yeah, it's better to put your name on it and live authentically and build a life to where you can do that. Now, I don't know you and what you think and what you believe on everything, and I don't presume to. I know that what I think and what I believe isn't illegal. It's not mean-spirited. It's not hateful, and it's not wrong. So I feel very confident saying it in front of people. I feel very confident putting my name and my face behind it. I have tried with all that I can to structure my life in a way that I can do that confidently. Other people are in a very different situation, and I understand that and I respect that. But the idea that you're putting a bunch of content on the internet and other places and you can hide behind a fake screen name or a VPN or whatever you think you're doing, I promise you can't. The surveillance state is too big and too good at what they do. And I wish I was better at my Havelmal thumping. I wish I could tell you the verse right now, and somebody over in the side absolutely will. But, you can think that you'll be saved from spears by avoiding the fray, but you'll find yourself old and alone and ashamed that you never went out and lived for that fear. And somebody will pop in the appropriate Havelmal quote on the side, and I apologize that I can't just pull that up as fast as I could. Honestly, I bet you my wife can pull that up on the side. But it's something to think about. Again, you're going to have to make those choices based on whatever factors are important to you, and you're going to have to bear the reputation of that. You will have to shoulder the glory of great success and of standing up and being courageous, or any shame that comes with not doing that, or any consequence that comes with courage, or any benefit that comes with avoiding that. So it's a decision you're going to have to make for yourself. But I do advocate as best you can and as most you can to do that. And then to be cautious with the things that you say them eloquently and you say them in a respectable way. One of the things, so this is a good time to mention this. One of the things that people do when they perceive that they have anonymity is then they get loose with what they say. And then they say ridiculous stuff that's inflammatory just to be inflammatory. because they have the perception that they're safe. They're hiding behind a pseudonym or a fake picture. And so they can just open up and say ridiculous things that they may not really believe, they may not really stand by, but they're fun and they get a reaction out of people. Trouble is when you find out that that secrecy doesn't really exist, those are the things that I've seen people, and I will say this 100% honestly, those are the things that I've seen bite people the worst, is when they think that they're being anonymous and they say ridiculous things.
Mm-hmm.
That's when they get hurt. It's not when they're using their name and their face and they say reasonable things that are politically incorrect. It's when they show off because they've got a fake name that I've seen bad things happen. Another question. This one's coming from Odyssey. Thank you guys that are listening on Odyssey. I appreciate that. I want to bring my friends and family to Asatru. I'm not the best people person. Can you give me one or two good tips on how to approach this? Daniel, what advice do you have for this person?
I mean, be the best person you can be, and be the living representation of the gods. I mean, we are our ancestors compiled in one living body. And the other part is pretty simple: bring them to an AFA event. I told the story the last time I appeared on the show, and my wife told the story when she was on the show. Interest in Asatru until she attended the first AFA that was fairly local to us. Zero interest in it. She was just there making sure I wasn't a kid around some weirdos and freaks, and was so blown away by the community and the camaraderie within that community that she applied before we pulled out the guy's driveway. And that's just facts. And if it's specifically if it's women in your life or whatever, I'm telling you, the women of the AFA will make them feel welcome in an instant, and they can sniff out newcomers like nobody's business. A new young lady shows up by herself or with her fellow to Thor's Hoff, you can best believe the ladies are going to be scooping her up and immediately start that frith bond that the women do. So yeah, bring your family to an AFA event, and when they start to realize that we are literally just normal people doing normal stuff, and we're not running around in shoulder pelts and wearing deer horns on our heads, and doing ooga booga chants and stuff, and realize this is a living faith and it's practiced by normal, good-looking people, and particularly families. Lots of families involved.
Those of you with video access might dispute Daniel's claim on good-looking folks, but okay, real quick. Woman who mentioned about her mom. The mom's name is Julie. For folks that want to do any prayers or offerings, and I'm very sorry to hear that. My advice, as far as also before I answer the question, just as suspected, my lovely wife, I love you, Mandy, thank you so much. Found have them all 16. A coward believes he will ever live if he keep him safe from strife. But old age leaves him not long in peace, though spears may spare his life. I think that's really, really important as well. I say this as somebody who's going to be 42 this year. I'm not an old man, but I'm feeling much older than I was. And one thing that I don't want, and that I think we all have to one degree or another, but I think we want to avoid as best we can, is regret. And I think that's another thing that speaks to being courageous, because a lot of the time consequences for courage are very, very temporary, but the reputation from it and the benefit from it, you don't realize until down the road, especially when you build a reputation for being courageous. But I'm so thankful of the times in my life that I did act courageously, looking back on them, even though I know how scary they were at the time. The things that keep me up are the times that I wish I could have done that different. I should have said this, but I chickened out. And that's not just about Asatru or about politics. It's about talking to a girl you like, or, anything. Taking the courageous step, you may risk embarrassment or temporary, quick consequences that are pretty scary. But man, looking back with regret is much, much worse because you can never get it back. But yeah, it's more grim than it needs to be. My suggestion on ways to bring friends and family into Asatru is very much what Daniel said. It can, especially if you're completely unconnected to Asatru, if you're, what quote unquote a normie, the idea of all of a sudden believing in, ancient paganism and things that are scary if you Google them, and people have mean things to say that were hateful or whatever they think. The way to diffuse that is have them meet AFA members. Have them meet the women and the little kids and us at an event, and then tell us to our face they think we're mean or scary. Actual interaction with real Asatru practicing our faith, that fixes everything. I can't say it'll fix things 100% of the time, but it's going to get you as closer than anything else. Seeing who we really are. I think, a soft way to do that, if they haven't been to something and are resistant, is our event pictures on here. I'd like to think that listening to this program is a good thing for them. If you're listening now, if you think these are good, I would recommend these. But also the slideshows of our, like the AFA in 2023 first quarter's up already. Just show them those kind of things. It's happy, smiling people with their families and ladies and kids and people doing fun things and having a good time. And I think that that's really the takeaway, is that we're regular folks. We're good people that love our families. We love our gods. We love our people. And people who interact with us in person, they love us. Anything else, it's hype. It's the media. It's, whatever other nonsense. In real life, take your family to one of our Hoffs. If you're too far away for that, take them to a meetup that's close to them. We've got meetups around the country and around the world, and we have them every weekend. Get them to something to where they get to see who we are. And I think that'll sell itself.
Hey, Matt.
Yes.
For a sec. I'm not sure if one of the previous commenters wanted me to say, but that is Jasmine is actually my sister, and it's my mom that is struggling with some health issues right now. And I appreciate my sister coming and supporting me tonight, and asking for prayers for Mom. It's appreciated.
So your wife gave me that intel a few minutes ago. I wasn't going to say nothing because I didn't want to put it out there if you didn't want to. First, I'm really sorry to hear that about your mom. I will definitely be praying for her.
It's appreciated.
And also, awesome. Hey, Jasmine, I appreciate you listening to the program tonight. I think the world of your brother. He is one of my very best friends, and he is a man I have a huge amount of respect for.
That's appreciated.
Wouldn't say it if it wasn't true. Next question, about the gods being representations of nature as an atheist position. If people worship nature as gods, nature being omnipotent and omnipresent, wouldn't it be the opposite of being atheists? I think that's an interesting intellectual argument. And what one of the things that I've always heard is that, atheists are religious. Atheism just becomes their religion because, again, they become very dogmatic with it. They become, almost worshipful of their position of atheism. So in that way, I think that trying to worship nature as if nature itself is some omnipotent, omnipresent thing is, I suppose it's a slight step away from atheism, but it is closer to atheism than it is to theism. In my All right, so I feel the need to try to couch it, and I shouldn't. I'm just putting it out there. Theism is belief in gods as actual gods. And that's scary. So many people want to try to poke around at that line and, well, nature's kind of a god, but kind of not. And if you're going to be a theist, if you're going to have faith in a god and be religious, worship that god. Worship those gods. Put your whole heart into it and proudly, if you can't even acknowledge that they're persons, in a sense, that they're individual personalities that have individual personality, then at the end of the day, it's trying to hedge your bets both sides. Omnipresent nature isn't the same as a God that thinks and feels and loves and hates and participates in the gift cycle with you. And I think viewing a reverence for nature to such a degree that you personify nature to godhood is the exact opposite of what authentic religiosity is. You see the beauty and the glory of your gods through the natural world. The things that you see around you that you love, you find as reflections of that which you worship. And, the directionality of that's very important. Nature is a gift from our gods. Our gods are not a personification of nature. And I hope that addresses what you're asking. What are your thoughts on it, Daniel?
I don't think I could have said it any better, but I would argue that nature isn't sentient. And by sentient, I mean it doesn't have feelings or a spirit of personality which animates it the way that our gods do.
See Nate Hayden over in the chat. Nate, I haven't talked to you in years, but I think about you often, and I'm really glad that you're listening to this program. I hope that you're doing well, and hope that you're doing good. And we've got some really cool stuff going on in your area, so I'd love to see you coming out and making it out to those stuff. But yeah, it's great that you're watching. I'm glad you're here. The next question. I know that heaven and hell, good and evil, are all Germanic words, thus Germanic concepts. You've spoken before about order versus chaos. Where does Asatru hold itself on the tenets of goodness and evil? So this is another thing that folks are very uncomfortable saying. And I know there are words that express this better, but I'm trying to think of how to encapsulate it. There was a current, and it's not all the way washed out of Asatru, but especially early on, where the early practitioners in a modern sense of Asatru were very, very conscious of defining themselves as how not Christian they were. So when you had Christian concepts like good and evil, there was this knee-jerk, no, we don't believe in good and evil, but we do believe in come up with what you can say that means good and evil but makes you not Christian. And I think that we've moved past that. In Asatru, we absolutely believe in good and evil. We believe in order and chaos, and those are, synonymous with good and evil to a degree. We believe in, but the thing is, it's good and evil mean different things to different contexts. Perhaps in a Christian sense, good is whatever is following the will of Jehovah, and evil is anything in opposition to that. In Asatru, good is things that are noble, and evil is things that are ignoble, or things that are, you know, are outside of nobility or against nobility. And so I think noble versus ignoble, and that, you know, also very clearly correlates between order versus chaos. That's what I think the best way to see it as from an Asatru practice. And when you look at noble versus ignoble, it's noble to be loyal to and to stand in allegiance with, and in under the command of, under the authority of our gods, against the enemies of our gods. Daniel, what do you have to add to that?
Not a lot. I mean, just as you said, we know what's right and we know what's wrong. We know health from sickness. We know order from chaos. We know light from dark. So certainly, I think in the modern sense, Asatru does have a stance on good and evil.
All right. Matt and Daniel, what is your go-to beer? Not necessarily your favorite beer, but the one that is accessible and easy to get your hands on. Daniel, you go first.
I would say Yingling, the dark amber. I like that one a lot. And it's easily accessible. But if I had to pick one that's my favorite, I know it's not part of the question, but I like a stout. I particularly like Founders Brewery from Michigan. They make a stout called KBS, which is Kentucky Breakfast Stout, and it's delicious.
But that the bane of the leprechauns?
That's oh, Matt, you're outing me, dude. Yeah, that's the one. But my go-to is typically Yingling.
You know what? My go-to is the beer that folks hand me. That's what I will say. So one of the many benefits of my position as All's Harrier Gothi is when I travel around the country, people hand me drinks all the time. And a free beer is the best beer. Outside of that, honestly, so people that know me, I have done a lot to build my hetero points, but I have a tendency to drink a fruity drink from time to time. So what I like to do with beers, honestly, I'm a big mark for those variety pack beers on stuff. Anything that says it's got some kind of a fruit note to it, I want to try it and see. Anytime they advertise those stouts that are chocolate or cream flavored or vanilla or whatever, I try them, and most often I'm disappointed because anytime there's notes of whatever, no, you need to punch me in the face with the vanilla. One of the things, I love the Kirkland rum from Costco, the spice rum. It's awesome. I know it's not beer, it's not part of the question, but it's a freebie for you. When you read the reviews that complain about it, they're like, it's like drinking a drunken gingerbread man. That's exactly what I want from my spiced rum. I don't want a note of nutmeg. I want to get hit in the face with it tasting like spice. So that's one of the things with beers. I like stuff with a fruity finish. There's one beer from Russian River. I worked there for a short time. Ron Mexico, and it had this really cool like coconut finish to it. They're really fancy there with their hops. Right now I'm drinking some Hop Valley Brewing Company Stash Bandicoot Hazy Imperial IPA. Again, I got it because it was a very reasonably priced beer at Costco with a variety pack, and I like trying different stuff. Honestly, the first ones that I killed of this, I forget what they were called, but they were like a pineapple flavored beer. They were really, really good. So whatever the thing out of that variety pack that was pineapple flavored, That's good stuff. But yeah, I mix it up depending on what's on sale and what's got a cool variety pack, especially if it's a seasonal variety pack. The next question. I don't drink. Can you honor your holy gods and ancestors with other drinks other than alcohol? Absolutely. Of course you can. Um, you know, we all come from different places in life. We all have different experiences that have brought us to where we are. And, that's fine. A number of some of the best people I know that practice Asatru either don't drink recreationally and only drink during ritual, or don't drink at all. And one of the things that we're trying to get better at when we have ritual, this is not a guarantee. You can't necessarily find this everywhere, but it's something personally I'm trying hard to do. And I'm trying to encourage our Gothar or Hoffs to do more, is to have a horn of like sparkling cider, not just for people who don't drink, but also for children, so that they can participate in the ritual and feel like they're fully part of it. The importance is to do something special. Now, I'm not a fan of using water. I don't think water is what you use for ritual offerings. Some people have an occasion for a certain thing. They think that spring water for a ritual does something in a certain way. I'm not. That's between them and the gods. But what I think, the gods have no shortage of booze. Like the gods don't, the gods aren't wanting for booze. The idea is it is an offering that you're doing that connects you with the gods. Now, there's a case to be made in Sumble and some of our other rituals that drinking a little bit puts you in an altered state, just enough to where it opens you up spiritually. It opens you up to the folk that you're interacting with and to the gods. But you can absolutely make offerings with other stuff. I mentioned sparkling cider. I know that people have used, juice or milk. I've done prison ministry, and in there we've got to be very, we've done bloats with coffee. I've had to do one in there with water. It wasn't my first choice, but it's what we had. I've done bloats in a prison with Mountain Dew. Again, it's not the ideal. It's not what I would do at home or at the Hoff, but in that situation, it's the best those guys can do. And so you make do with what you have. I've also had people who did offerings with, I think it's Caliber. That's like a really good non-alcoholic beer. There's a lot of stuff you can do, but no, you don't need to consume alcohol to worship our gods. Our gods are much bigger and more important than that. Do you have any thoughts on that, Daniel?
Yeah, something that we do at Thor's Hoff, and it's not necessarily just for the god. We have I like to call it a shrine, but it's not really a shrine. It should be a shrine eventually. For one of our early donators was Terry Rumpf, who passed away, and we named our fellowship hall after him. So we have a nice little portrait of him hanging on the wall. And one of our traditions is the first plate goes to Terry. We'll make a plate for Terry, and some of the guys will bring whatever his favorite drink was, and that would be Trent who did that. Pour out a glass for him. But yeah, a lot of times offerings of food are sometimes appropriate, especially when we're talking about the ancestors. My grandfather preferred a certain type of spiced rum, and that's what I'd pour out for him.
All right. Next question. I'm a white South African living in the States. Njordshof is my home. I appreciate everything you guys do, given that my family comes from generations of farmers. My question is, what is the end game? To elaborate, sometime soon the power grid will collapse, violence will escalate, and the ANC will look away from certain racial atrocities. Does the AFA do blessings for? Oh, okay, that's a different question. All right, cool. So, what is the end game if everything collapses? And I'm glad that you specified in South Africa, because I am in no position to dispute the reality of that situation maybe happening. So I try really hard to always give some kind of good answer here. I don't have the best answer. Um, I wish that I knew the solution to the problem of your countrymen. Um, and I don't know. I'm not familiar enough with the situation. Uh, Things look pretty bad there. I think that I know that our people like to have a very strong connection with the land. And I know that many of the white South Africans, their families have been there for, you know, 300 to 400 years of building farms in that country. I think that so sorry for the dead air, but I think this deserves a really well thought out answer, and I want to give you that. I've thought about this a lot, and so one of the things we started, shoot, I don't even know how many years ago, doing our donations every quarter to try to help displaced victims of racial violence in South Africa. And the most effective thing that we've been able to do is collect money and donate it to the commissary for the South Africa Family Relief Project. And that takes folks that are in the camps, and they've got stuff there to where they feed a number of people and try to give them some kind of livelihood on building farms and doing things there. And so we asked ourselves, this is a long roundabout thing, and I know it doesn't completely answer your question, but I'm trying to approach it the best I can. So we were all horrified at what's happening to white South Africans. And we're all sitting over here feeling terrible and not knowing what to do. So we're sitting with all this hand wringing, not knowing what to do for a long time. And one thing that was important to me when I became House Harrier Gothi was, you know what? I don't know what we can do, but I know what we can't do. What we can't do is nothing. What we can do is something. And the best thing we've been able to figure out is helping folks eat. One of the big things over there they're having a really hard time with for a while was baby formula. So we collected a whole bunch of money and we sent it over there for them to get baby formula. And a bunch of babies that didn't have formula did for a few months. And it doesn't fix the problem. You're asking about end game, I know that. But it helped a little bit in that day at that time. What I would love to see is for folks in South Africa, for our folk in South Africa to come home to our ancestral gods and to be Asatru. I think that will help them spiritually a lot in a way that some of the other things aren't. As far as what a good end game is, I don't know. If there's a solution over there to where those people can live with dignity and pride and be safe and their families be safe, great. If they can find someplace else to go, any place else to go that wants them, that they can live with dignity and with safety, I think that's probably the best solution for some of those people. I was really honored to find out, and I didn't know this at the time, but when it all started getting really bad, my mom's cousins, I don't know what that is to me, second cousin perhaps, That family took in a refugee from South Africa that escaped on a sailboat when everything fell. And I think honestly, the end game is, are people getting out of there and getting someplace that they can be safe and that generations of their family can grow up with some safety. And wherever that is, I don't know. I don't know the perfect solution for it, but I pray and I hope that they find it. And we would love to help those people any way that we can, and we feel for their plight so badly. Do you have any ideas on a good end game, Daniel?
I really don't. I think you put it best. It's awful what those people are going through. Get out, as best they can and as safely as they can. That would be. I mean, where to go though? I don't know. I don't know that answer either. But away is better than where they're at.
There's something, and this feels like trivializing it, and I don't mean to. There's something called the sunk cost fallacy, where you gamble and you lose, and because you can't afford to lose, you stay at that table and risk everything over and over and more and dig the hole deeper and deeper, because the idea of losing all that you've put in is too overwhelming. At some point, you've got to know when to stop and try something else and cut bait and do something different. And I think maybe that's where those folks are, unfortunately. I'd love to help them. I wish they could come over here. If they could come over here, I would love to help them once they get here. I wish them all the best in the bottom of my heart. I don't know the best solution for them, but I want the very best for them, and I'd be happy to help them in a lot of ways. Next question is, does the AFA do blessings for expecting mothers? Absolutely we do. We've done blessings for folks that are trying to conceive. We've done blessings for ladies who have a baby in utero, and we've done a lot of blessing and work with them throughout their pregnancy. That's something that our ladies have really done a beautiful, beautiful thing with, and our Githias have done a beautiful thing with. What is the Asatru Folk Assembly's thoughts on honoring ancestors who were devout Judeo-Christians? Are they with the ancestors and just realize now that the Christian fear-mongering was a sham? Yes. So, I mean, that's the simple answer. I believe, and I think that people of a wide variety of faith believe that when this life is done, you figure it out. The truth is revealed. The big truths are revealed in a lot of ways. And that's going to be the proving ground. Were we right or were they right? I believe that we're right. If that's the case, then yeah, I don't think that the Jewish God has the magic to separate our ancestors from us in the afterlife. Of course, we honor them. There's a generation of people that I think that we don't, or that we have a difficult time with, and that's the ones that rejected our faith and embraced Christianity. But every generation past that, those folks didn't know that they had a choice. They didn't know that they had an option. Many, many, many of them were amazing, noble, fantastic people, were heroes and heroines, were amazing, amazing folk that, of course, we honor. The vast, vast majority of us, when we're in Sumble and we're honoring our parents and our grandparents, almost all of those people were Christians. We're finally in an age now where I think that some of our younger members, their parents were atheists or agnostic or maybe some kind of non-denominational pagans. But for centuries, all of our ancestors were Christians, and we honor them as much as we possibly can honor them. And I think that you'll find that we all are very comfortable doing that. What are your thoughts on that, Daniel?
I don't think I could have said that any better. But as far as the afterlife and where our Christian ancestors go, I think some of them, this is just me thinking, I don't know. I guess we'll find out, hopefully much later. But I think once they cross beyond the other side of the veil, I think the other ancestors are going, we had it wrong. But they're nonetheless still embraced by their forebears. That's my hope and that's my belief.
Absolutely. All right. So Shay asks, our folk builder, Shay McCurdy from Oklahoma, seeing the imagery chosen for Frey's Hoff, is there a reason y'all went with the stag rather than the boar? First, yes, I'm sure that there is. Do I know what that imagery is? No, I do not. Yeah, I was curious. So some people may ask how that comes about. I like to have some say or some veto power if something is just ridiculous. But honestly, it's really important to me that the local Gothar get a big say in what imagery, like what color scheme, what animal we use for the design work for future Hoffs. I want them to be able to put that in there and put that devotion in there. And I trust that to our Gotharan regions because, they're the ones that have built that region up. They're the ones that are going to be the stewards of that Hoff. And them putting that personal touch on it is important. So, the bigger AFA or me, I've got some veto power in it if it was, disrespectful or just really ugly or something. But within the scope of things, and you may have seen some of the different animals for different Hoffs. Now we try to keep them relevant to the god the Hoff is for, but it's more than just that. It's a temple to worship that god, but it's also the local house of worship for all of the Asatru are in that region. And there are bloats held at all of these Hoffs to many of our gods, not just the god of that Hoff. And so some of that goes into some of the color choices and the animal choices. Sometimes the animal is very relevant to the region that we're in and not just to the god that they're worshiping. So that factors in as well. Like for Njord's Hoff, we used the swordfish, the marlin. If that Hoff would have gone somewhere different, if it would have gone to the Pacific Northwest somewhere, maybe we would have used a salmon or something different. It still would have been appropriate to Njordur, but it wouldn't have been the same animal. So I'm not sure exactly why the Ericksons chose to use the stag as opposed to the boar, but I think it's beautiful. I think it looks really cool, and I think that the forest hunter green on that very, very light, almost like a mint ethereal green is really cool. I think it's going to be a challenge to find merchandise that fits it at that color of green. It's like a super light blue, super light green, white mixture, but I think it's beautiful and I think it's going to look really cool. Question. Today I was watching the Pharaoh's Golden Parade again. Do you think that European spirituality should reach such a level, or that something like that is the goal to be achieved for Euro people? I have not watched the Pharaoh's Golden Parade, so I don't know what all that entails. I have to assume that you're talking about the grandeur of ancient Egypt. And I think that, and I'll ask Daniel on this, I'm occupying a lot of the time talking here, and I'm aware of that. Yes, that level of glory and greatness and the state being an Asatru state and all of those things, absolutely. What that looks like, though, I think we always conceive of something from the past, and myself included, as like that's what we should shoot for. But honestly, anything we do now or in the future is going to be take the shape and the relevance of that age with a different aesthetic, with a different. We can never bring back the past. We can hope to be inspired by it. We can move those concepts forward, but we're not going to LARP and go back to the copper age of Egypt to do things. I hope that we do things that are more glorious, but we have to do them on different terms and in a different context depending on our situation. What are your thoughts, Daniel?
Same as yours. I haven't seen what the gentleman was referring to about the Pharaoh's Golden Parade, but we all spend time studying history and studying the past, and we're inspired by it. And I think, as Matt said, we have to be forward thinking, and by that I mean forward facing. We're heading in a specific direction. You'll hear this a lot, that people in our circles might say something to the effect, and I'm paraphrasing, I was born in the wrong time. Absolutely not. We were born in the right time and the right place to do the right thing, to push this religion and our people forward. I like to look. One time I remember asking Matt, I was on the 25th anniversary, what's the next 25 years going to bring? What's that going to look like? And the imagery I have in my head is even more grand and ridiculous than you can imagine. I want to see pyro every time we step out on to the front lawn of Sigourheim. I joke, but that's the way I try to think, and it's what I have control over now. And man, I think about what Lauren, my youngest child, what her kids are. What's the AFA going to look like for them when they come into the world? And it's beautiful in my head, but I don't know how to articulate it.
So Daniel, you run a lot of the show at Thor's Hoff. Next Ostara, I'm gonna come there, and when I drop my hands, I want that cane pyro. If we don't have that cane pyro, I'm gonna be disappointed.
We'll see what we can do, boss. I have to check the flower eggs on that before we commit to it.
Fair enough. So for those of you listening and not able to see the chat on the side, Whitten Clifford Erickson, who's the guy who decided on the stag, has this to say. The stag is symbolic of masculine virility and strength. Freyr uses the stag as his last line of defense at Ragnarok. And the stag looks cooler than the boar. I think that last piece is a matter of opinion, but the stag is a majestic animal. No, I think it looks really cool. I honestly, if I would have guessed, I would have thought it would have gone with a boar as well. The stag's fantastic, though, and I think it looks really cool. And this is not the only Hoff that Lord Freyr is ever going to have in Midgard. When we start getting Hoffs in every town, there'll be some boar-related Hoffs to them at some point. Promise you that.
I do think the stag imagery is beautiful, though.
Oh, it's awesome. With the way the horns are like that, I really like what they came up with. All right, so next question, Matt and Dan, what is the most creative kindred initiation ceremony that you have heard of or been part of? Daniel, go first.
I can't say that I have been. And we when we founded our kindred, Riggs Blood Kindred, and we stretched across the Carolinas and Georgia, we had talked about some sort of initiation rite, but in my experience, I've never seen one. and that's something Gothi East and I might have to come up with as we go forward. Can't say I've ever seen anything like that.
All right. So I think that most kindreds just get around and oath in, maybe have a bloat, and probably don't have something ridiculous. Sometimes people will have a special location that's sacred to them. When we oathed in our kindred in Alaska that I was a part of, we did it at Arctic Valley. And Arctic Valley is, for those of you not familiar, is like a ski resort. Resort overstates it. It's a ski course just outside of Anchorage, on the way between Anchorage and Eagle River. And it's a mountain that, for a time, and maybe still, like half of it was owned by the military, half of it's, municipality of Anchorage or whatever. But it was a place that my mom and my uncle used to like to ski as kids. And they were up there, and my grandfather was in the military, so they were up there doing that as Army kids in Alaska. And it's where my grandfather and my grandmother's ashes were distributed. And so we did our oathing and our ceremony for the start of that kindred up there at Arctic Valley because it was kind of sacred ground. Most creative. All right, so I'm gonna put it out there. This is not. Do not advertise this. I don't recommend this. It is just the most creative and interesting kindred initiation that I have seen or been a part of. So a group of guys who are no longer, none of the people who were there at that initiation, one member of that kindred is still an AFA member. These guys aren't still AFA members, but they were a very rowdy group of dudes from Boston. And they did their kindred oaths and initiation at Winter Nights in the Poconos. And, they were rowdy young guys, and alcohol was flowing. And I think most of them were shirtless. I think one of them had some kind of animal pelt on, and they wanted me to witness it. And they were down by the fire, and there was chest slapping, and it was... It was loud. They had a whole loud, like, war cry thing they did. I think that's the most creative and most crazy kindred initiation thing I've been part of. Most of them just have like a nice solemn oathing in ceremony, and then that's that. These guys were a little bit rowdier, but they had a whole like white man version of the haka that they did, and a bunch of stuff. So that was probably the most elaborate I've seen.
Never saw that.
Nope. You weren't there that year, I don't think. Maybe you were. I got to think on it now. Dan, what famous musicians have you met in person?
I have met all of the guys from Killswitch Engage. I've met the guys from Chimera, and I think I met the guy. Yeah, I met the guys from 3 Inches of Blood one time. They're famous to me. It's the kind of music I listen to. But it's not. I mean, it's not Ann Wilson or anything.
So I know that I was not asked this question, but I'm gonna throw out some bonus information because it entertains me to do so, and I think we've got like one question left after this. So, famous musicians that I have met. So I did security in Alaska for a long time, and I worked at, I would do normal concerts, normal venues, and then I was working at a bar that would get a lot of like has-been acts to come in and do, one big hit, and then they wouldn't be there or whatever. So I met a number of folks. Shock G from Digital Underground, also known as Humpty, was there. And I tell you what, he was really cool. I know this is a folkish broadcast, but I'll put it out there. He did his, one hit from them. He did the Humpty Dance song, but he stayed at that bar all night long. He went up there. He randomly jumped up on stage and did songs with the local cover band. He schmoozed with, people on the smoke deck, and he hung out all night. That was pretty cool. And I got to talk to members of his band outside, and they were all really nice guys. I worked this, it was called like the Second Chance Prom, and it was for a bunch of, well past his prime. This was like 2012 or something in Anchorage, and Vanilla Ice was hosting it. And Vanilla Ice was like ridiculous on the mic check. We had to open like an hour late because he was such a diva on the mic check, and I thought he'd be a jerk. He was not. He was awesome. He was really cool with everybody. He was very nice with the crowd. He didn't take himself too serious. He did all the silly Vanilla Ice stuff you'd want him to do. That was cool. One of the things was so it was my job to stand in front of the stage, and it was my job to let the hot chicks up on the stage, but to keep the bigger gals off the stage. And so I remember he, selected some hot chicks to get up on the stage and dance with them. And then there was this heftier gal that tried to, and I had to be the one that like, no, not tonight, honey. I'm sorry. And so that was a thing there. I got to meet Huey Lewis in the News. Huey Lewis was kind of a jerk to everybody, but his band was really cool. And I appreciated his band because they let us eat a bunch of their free food they had spread out in the green room. We got to eat all the stuff they didn't want, and that was awesome. Also, not super famous. The group, I guess, is famous, but I don't know if they're individually famous. Celtic Woman was up there doing a show at the Performing Arts Center. They were all like vegetarians and stuff. So again, they had this big elaborate feast laid out for them. They didn't touch. They let security chow down, and it was awesome. And they were super nice to us. That's what I got on famous musicians. And then the last one we have actually we got an extra one come in. So second to last one we have. Dan, have you ever grown out your mustache? It looks like you could grow a killer stash.
I have, but I didn't really start paying attention to trying to grow some facial hair until the last 6 or 7 years, and I am a natural bald, but my hair color is actually sort of like a dirty blonde, so it kind of looks like dirt on my lip. But I can grow a pretty thick stash, and I attempted a full beard a couple of winter nights ago, and stash was pretty tight on that one. But so when I decided I was going to shave the beard off, I was going to try out just the stash, and it was really good and thick. And when I shaved the beard off and just had the stash, it looked like I had no chin. So off with the stash. So yeah, I just keep a fairly light, weak looking beard now.
I've never had just the stash. My dad has always tried out just the stash every now and again. And he had my dad was in the reserves. And so he would have like the army compliant ends at the edge of your mouth stash. I have never tried just the stash. Some people got really cool stuff with it. Curious to see Daniel with just growing out the stash hard. Not advising it, just saying I'm curious.
Rob got the best mustache in the AFA.
The gauntlet has been thrown down, the rest of you gentlemen. Apparently,
yeah, Rob got the stash.
So I'm glad you bring up Rob. We got one more question in the queue and we'll answer it, but I want to throw this out there for those of you who might not be familiar. Gothi Rob Stam, owner of the greatest stash in the Asatru Folk Assembly, apparently according to Daniel, is the dean of our Asatru Academy. And I'm very excited about this. We're just wrapping up the first year of the Asatru Academy. Now, the Asatru Academy is our AFA homeschool program. For those of you who don't know about it, the first year we just did kindergarten. And I think that's graduating class of 2035, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, so we did kindergarten. So far, it's been great. The parents have great things to say about it. Our enemies have great things to say about it. And it's been really, really impressive. The work that our volunteers and Rob himself have put in it's amazing. And they're literally building the next generation. It's not as flashy as our Hoffs, but it's probably much more substantial than any single one of our Hoffs, us establishing that homeschool curriculum and the homeschool program. I am assured that by this fall, when we take enrollment for next year, we will have not only kindergarten, but first grade, second grade, and third grade. That is a huge leap forward, and these people have put in a lot of work to make that happen. So if you guys have kids and you want to homeschool them, we encourage you to do that. We also know that one of the biggest things that's a difficulty when it comes to homeschooling is parents' concern about whether or not it's compliant with their state regulations. How do they interface with that? How do they do it? One thing we knew going in that's a huge part of our homeschool program is the hand-holding of parents. Hey, you guys got this. What state are you in? We gear it towards the most restrictive state to make sure this is legit in all 50 states. And we're making sure it's legit in some provinces of Canada that do allow homeschooling. But yeah, taking care of all that, we do that. We walk you through it. We take care of you and we take care of your child all the way through. So it's very much a partnership between us and parents to help facilitate that homeschooling that's become so important as we watch our schools become very concerning places. I say that as a father who wants to have my daughter in this program here, I guess 2 years from now when she's eligible. It's a huge, huge thing. And I'm so thankful for the guys that are volunteering and have put so much time in it. We are very, very, very proud of it. And anybody on here that's got kids going to go into kindergarten or third grade this year, please consider the Asatru Academy. We would love to help you and help your children to succeed and to be the very best you guys can be and help you guys and your families.
Yeah, Rob's got some amazing support staff helping him out with that. And I've been in the room when they've had some of their, online meetings and stuff, and all the tremendous detail that goes into not only the curriculum, but the interaction with the parents and students themselves. I mean, they pour tons of hours into this.
So it's more than just this, but at the very least, it's made up of parents that have already put their children through homeschooling successfully and that have a lot to offer on that. It also has former teachers that have been involved in that from the public school end and can add their expertise to it. As people get into the higher grades, we have people that want to volunteer that are specialists in particular fields. We really have a deep bench to pull from on that. So last question of the night, unless we get any more in. Why do gods and goddesses names sometimes have R's at the end? That is a Old Norse gender convention. Very often, you will typically see that done with a lot of proper nouns generally, and specifically with masculine proper nouns. It's really a question to ask Svan when he's on here because he's much more of a scholar on linguistics. But that's what a lot of that is. And you don't see it when it's anglicized. When it's anglicized, often you'll see an A at the end of a goddess's name. But in the Old Norse, you'll see an R at the end of masculine names. And that R goes away when you conjugate it. Like Freyr is Freyr, but it will be Frey's Hoff because it's one word. Or Njordur is the god, but when it's conjoined, it's Njordshof as one word. So adding that R very much is to imply masculinity to the word. It's tricky because in English we don't have a masculine and a feminine case in terms of words, but that's what that's for. Daniel, do you have anything that you want to leave us with tonight, or any last words that you'd like to say about the Jarl or anything?
Sure. I think the overall theme on tonight's episode has been living courageously and living openly. I think that's a lesson we could take away from any one of our heroes and any one of the leaders of the AFA. A lot of support goes into these shows. Nick does a tremendous job behind the scenes producing it. We don't thank him enough, and we should. Nick, thank you for all the stuff you're doing behind the scenes to make this happen. Graphics look great. You do a phenomenal job. If you're watching this and you're not in the AFA and you are a person of folkish orientation, European person of folkish orientation, and you're riding the fence, get off the fence and come join us. Any one of our folk builders at any point in the country will be glad to help you through the process. And if you're considering it, quit considering it and just join the team. Quit being on the sidelines and get on the field with the rest of us.
Well said. I know we've beat the courage and openness thing to death tonight. You're the one who has to look yourself in the mirror at the end of the day. You're the one making decisions for yourself and your family. But I would encourage everyone on here, live in such a way that you can hold your head high, have your chest out, and live proud and strong for what you believe. If you're hearing this, you like what we do. If you are a heterosexual white person, you should join the Asatru Folk Assembly. We would love to have you with us. We are much stronger when we stand together. We're doing amazing things, and we would invite you guys to be a part of it. So thank you guys so much for tuning in tonight and every week. Thank you guys for your great questions. We appreciate it. The lively chat on the side is really special to me. I'm glad that you guys are doing that. Appreciate y'all. Please remember to keep Julie in your prayers. Hail the gods, hail the folk, hail the AFA. And until next time, please remember that victory never sleeps.
Hail.